Welcome to the 6th episode of the Monthly Blend. I'm Anthony Millen. I've been part of the startup ecosystem for over 20 years as a startup attorney, a serial entrepreneur, and a venture capital partner. I'm the chair of Next, powered by Shulman Rogers, an innovative new model for offering fixed-price legal services to startups and emerging growth companies through a client-centric delivery model, and also a venture partner with Urban Us. In today's show, we will explore how leading corporations can partner in novel ways with startup and emerging growth companies to drive forward innovation in DC, Maryland, Virginia region, also known as the DMV. One of the novel approaches to promote collaboration between corporate institutions and startup entities is the Maryland Business Innovation Challenge, powered by the Maryland Business Innovation Association and sponsored by TEDCO, Maryland Department of Commerce, and Memphis Brow. Under the challenge, corporate partners will position challenge statements that will be presented to the innovation community. The goal is to build a program through which corporations and innovators, including entrepreneurs, can connect, build collaborative relationships, develop new partnerships, strengthen companies, and invest in and grow our innovation economy in the DMV region. Today, we are fortunate to have representatives from 3 of these corporate challenges who will be posing challenges to the innovators in our ecosystem. Joaquin, client leader at IBM, Emily Durfee, a program manager at Healthworx, and Pritpal Kalsi, CEO of SC&H Group. Before we get to our guests, I'd now like to introduce my co-host of the Monthly Blend, Tian Wang.
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you to our guests for joining us. Hello, everybody. My name is Tian Wang. I'm CEO of Opus 8, which is a company that helps private investment funds as well as companies raise capital through our network of high net worth investors and family offices. I'm also managing general partner of Phoenix Fund, which seeks to invest in early stage pre-A round companies that are doing amazing things in fintech, marketing tech, and health technologies. So it's a great pleasure to have everybody here today, and it's my honor to introduce our guests. We have, why don't we go around the horn here in alphabetical order, starting with Emily Durfee, who's a program manager at Healthworx. If you could kindly take a few minutes and introduce yourself and your company and explain what excites you about the Maryland Business Innovation Challenge. Emily.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me on this show. As you mentioned, my name's Emily Durfee, and I'm part of the Healthworx team. Healthworx is the innovation and investment arm of Care First, and we're focused on simplifying healthcare innovation. And we do this through 3 main pillars. We partner with more established companies. For example, we recently announced a partnership with CityBlock to improve health outcomes for underserved populations. We invest in emerging companies who are rapidly scaling healthcare solutions, and we build and co-build new ideas. And that's really where my work comes in. My background is in early stage innovation. I've been an early employee at various startups, including Clover Health, which is a VC-backed San Francisco company. I've been a VC investor. I've been a tech consultant for startups. Now I'm working in corporate innovation with startups. And so I've really run that gamut. And I'm really passionate about making sure that we are able to improve early stage innovation and build and co-build those new ideas. And I bring that to my role at Healthworx, where I lead our Healthworx Hub, which is a suite of programs that helps us engage those early stage entrepreneurs. And I'd say in my experience, that's kind of highlighted 2 things, right? First of all, I've learned that innovation has to be an open door. We really need to learn from other people in the ecosystem. We cannot have an echo chamber. And second of all, it needs to be enabled by an ecosystem. You can't have really great startups without investors and corporates and regulators and all of those people contributing. And so I think that's why we're really excited about the Maryland Business Innovation Challenge, is that it helps us make sure that we're furthering healthcare innovation by opening the doors to innovation and engaging with people like you guys, our other corporate partners, and innovators within the ecosystem. So thank you for having us, and really looking forward to meeting the rest of the team.
Thank you so much for being here, Emily. Next guest is Joaquin, who is a client leader at IBM. John, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's great to be here today. And yes, we're excited about the Maryland Business Innovation Challenge as well. And so I lead IBM's business in the state of Maryland, the District of Columbia, and with a focus on public sector and government affairs and community affairs. So do a lot of things, but this is really our opportunity as a 109-year-old innovative leader in the tech industry. Hopefully, IBM you don't have to introduce to the world, but maybe some don't know a little bit about us. But over the past 28 years, we've led the world in patent creation. So that's a proxy for innovation, and very proud of that. Not all of it gets commercialized as we would like, but many of the innovations that we've developed get licensed to other companies, and you see them in products and services that you all use today. So our challenge, and I know we'll talk about it in a little bit more detail, is really about the next wave of computing with quantum computing and driving innovation in that market. And as a leader in that space over the last 20 years, this has been kind of in the laboratories and in our research arm. It's now about ready to come out into the world. And coincidentally, a local company called IonQ was just announced this week that they're going to be the first pure play quantum computing company that's going public as part of a SPAC. And I'll let you finance guys define and talk to that. But it comes out of University of Maryland and here in College Park. So it's a great, success story. And we're hoping to promote other successes like that. Personally, we had nothing to do with IonQ, but in other quantum startups, we hope to have a role of promoting, partnering, purchasing, all the things that big companies do. So thank you.
Great. Thanks for being here, John. And last but not least, Pritpal Kalsi, who is the CEO of SC&H Group. Welcome, Pritpal.
Thank you. Thank you, Anthony and Tian, for having me on the show. As you mentioned, my name is Pritpal Kalsi, CEO for SC&H Group. It's a 30-year-old firm that specializes in management consulting and CPA services in audit and tax. And one of the things that I try to highlight for those that don't know the firm is that we're one of the fastest growing management consulting CPA firm in the Baltimore region. We do have 300 plus personnel team. It's based out of Sparks, Maryland, Ellicott City, Maryland, and also in Tysons, Virginia. Kind of my story, why this is important, and something that I take personal pride in. Innovation is something that we started at our organization, which I've always said, SC&H is an entrepreneurial firm. We have 11 distinct service lines. If you really look at the history for the 30 years, every 3 to 4 years, we've innovated and tried something different. But about 4 years ago, we formulated what is now known as the Innovation Committee, which was just a disciplined conversation on holding ourselves to looking beyond of what is and what potentially is out there that we should be staying ahead of, right? So as someone that's a natural tinkerer, as someone that is naturally curious about so many different things, we've advanced that conversation to the point where as an organization, it's now one of our core values. And it is one of those things that even though we're sort of a traditional firm with accounting services, we're driven by the excitement of what more we can do. And we are getting to the point where we want to have this conversation with our business parties in the area that share this passion. As Emily and John have alluded to, innovation in itself is fostered best with those that ultimately are trying to bring new ideas. And that's exactly what we're doing as part of our venturing into the Innovation Challenge. Our challenge specifically is something that's probably near and dear to many organizations. As an organization, we emphasize on what we say are our people first promises around clients, colleagues, and communities. With that emphasis, we have been able to nurture quite a bit of that in a traditional office environment. Recognizing the new norm, we're looking to just reimagine the going forward workforce and how do you continue to serve on that people first promise, recognizing that as an organization, we feel the need to be more hybrid and more flexible in terms of where our teams and our clients and our communities that we're going to impact will be served from. So excited to be part of this conversation.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for all you're doing to promote innovation in our region. I would like to start with John. So John, IBM's challenge goal is to build a market-leading quantum computing industry in the state of Maryland, which is hugely ambitious, obviously. So two-part question. A, what is quantum for our viewers, and where is quantum now in its development? And B, why is IBM focusing on Maryland and our region here to build out quantum, and what is IBM looking for from our region from this challenge?
Well, that's a lot of questions there, but thank you. And I'll try and do my best to make this simple because quantum computing is not an easy thing. It's the domain of quantum physics and quantum mechanics. And, that goes back to Albert Einstein and mathematicians. And it's really based in the way down at the subatomic particle way that the world works, so nature works. And I'd say it's a radically different way of computing. Instead of zeros and ones, it's qubits, it's entanglement, superpositioning. I would refer people to Google that if you want to learn more. But here's the important thing about quantum computing is, and I give a couple examples. In 2018, Google, who has developed a quantum computer, as IBM has, ran a test on an equation that the smart people in society, mathematicians, believe would take 10,000 years to calculate. 10,000 years to calculate. I don't know how they come up with that and who would be around to see that it actually got done. But this 53 qubit computer took 200 seconds to do that. 200 seconds. So that's a 1.5 trillion times faster processing of that calculation than the most powerful supercomputers, which happen to be two IBM supercomputers at Department of Energy labs, could do on that equation. That's a 53 qubit computer. A Chinese physicist and engineering team did a similar calculation, and they did it 200 trillion times faster. Again, how you know about that, I don't know. I'll leave that to the real smart people out there. But so what is imaginable with processing speed of this capability? I'll give you a couple examples that I often talk to. One is in healthcare and life sciences, which is such a big industry in Maryland with the anchor federal labs and federal agencies in the space, and such a great biopharma community and ecosystem. But imagine in COVID times, if you could have a digital twin of your body in a computer, and you could model complex compounds, vaccines, the pathogen of COVID itself, and you could do all of this in a computing space in split-second time. You could really rapidly expand or shrink, the time it takes to develop treatments, and maybe our society wouldn't have went through what it's going through right now. The other thing is precision medicine. If I can have a model of me, I can know how drugs react. So there's a lot of opportunity there. One other I'd give is around transportation. We always talk about autonomous vehicles in this kind of George Jetson world where things just happen. We sit in a car, read our paper or our device, and we travel around, and it's safer. You really need processing speed of this type to make that a reality. There are obviously some tests in certain areas, but to take that much data, to calculate it and kick it out in real time is what scientists and many people think quantum can do. And there's a lot of others. One last one I'd note is, imagine if we could tackle global warming, global climate change with technology as opposed to the ways we're looking at it now. And I think that's a real opportunity. So developing compounds that might attach themselves to carbon. And right now, even these supercomputers can barely model very simple, drugs, atoms, whatever. So there's a lot of opportunity there. So, but here's the thing, quantum computing right now is kind of in its infancy. It's in the labs. It's, the hardware and the infrastructure are being developed now, but it's the domain of physicists, scientists, and things like, or people like that. What IBM is doing over the next few years is developing a software stack and the infrastructure that allows the common person to access it via tools they use today, Python, APIs, and to access it via the cloud. So to really democratize quantum computing, much like they did standard computing in the 70s and 80s. And now we see what that has done for society. So it's not going to replace typical computing, because you don't need TikTok to run 200 trillion times faster on your phone. You don't need Excel to do that. Some people giggle at that one. Thank you. It shows my relevance to my kids. But think about it. It's going to coexist, and it's going to be used for certain use cases. So, that's a little bit about it. IBM has a roadmap to a 1,100 qubit machine by the end of 2023. So in just 2 short years, what a 53 qubit machine did in 200 seconds of something that takes 10,000 years, who knows what that means. But I think it's going to open up a new level of discovery and opportunity for society. You see these movies that are maybe dystopian in the future, Minority Report, Eagle Eye. I'm sure there's a lot more of them, but those type of worlds might exist in this, and hopefully for the good and the better of society.
Yeah. So really quick, why Maryland, and why did you pick this region, and what are you looking for from this challenge?
Sure. Personally, I'm a Marylander, so it takes leadership, right? And IBM's doing these type of things all across the world. They're partnering, but this is a new model, new technology, and a new ecosystem that's being developed. And we wanted to, as a DMV guy, bring some of that fun that Silicon Valley has, all the wealth and prosperity, bring it here. And here's why. We have a international leading university, top 10, University of Maryland, College Park, with a quantum information science program. They kicked out the first publicly traded, or soon to be publicly traded, pure play quantum company. So there's a lot of skill there. There's research labs there at Johns Hopkins University. There's the biopharma community. There's federal dollars. There's policy making. There's a lot of things that are really special here in Maryland. And I think we want to take advantage of that. And, again, as a leader in my community, I want to promote that. And if I can get some IBM attention here and we can be the next Silicon Valley, we're hopeful for that. So hopefully that answers some of your question.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, John. We now go from the world of quantum computing to the world of healthcare. And to help lead us in this part of our conversation, we have Emily from Healthworx. And Healthworx Challenge goal is to improve health equity by engaging communities, improving and managing healthcare. And so, Emily, I'd like to start by asking you how you define or describe engaging communities in care.
Absolutely. And just to take a quick step back, there are, in fact, lots of commonalities between quantum and healthcare, and I look forward to talking about those in some of the later sections of this podcast. But to refocus on the Healthworx Challenge, we're really excited about engaging communities in care because that is often the human experience in healthcare, right? I want each of you guys to think about your experience in healthcare, right? How frequently do you go through that process completely independently? How frequently do you decide you need to go to care and you don't turn to your friends or your family to say, do you think I should get this vaccine? Or how often do you go to the dentist? Or, is it really helpful to go to a mental health care provider, right? Or when you actually decide to go access care, right? You ask for referrals from trusted, members of your family or community for who you should talk to, who will understand your challenge, who will give you the best advice. If you're someone like me who has gotten knee surgery, you're probably asking your friends or your family for a ride there, right? Or to help you organize how to get there. You talk to your friends afterwards to process, how did this go? What was the experience here, right? And then afterwards, if you have follow-up care, you often need to access resources through your community, right? Whether that's getting a gym membership or making sure you go get more groceries. You can tell I'm trying to be healthier. Or, making sure that you're following up in other types of ways to ensure that you're accessing quality care, right? And it's very, very rare that healthcare is done on a completely independent basis, but we don't usually talk about communities when we talk about healthcare. And that's why we really want to make sure that we're engaging those communities in the process of care. They are the things that help us connect ourselves to the healthcare system and drive engagement around things that are often scary, uncomfortable, complicated, right? How do I pay for this? How do I access it? What do I need? And that's why we want to make sure that we are, engaging communities. And communities can be anything. It can be your family, it can be your culture, it can be your neighborhood or your school or your book club or your mom's group, right? Any of those things, but it are the people that you trust that are part of your nuclear group that help you make decisions. And we want to engage those groups in what we think of as 3 different ways. The first is around data, right? We often think about either individual level data or population level data, but we rarely understand what is actually happening on a community level, what are the challenges that people face, and how can we support them. The second area is around the care journey, right? Depending on where you live, what insurance you have, what you have access to, your journey to accessing care could look a lot different, right? It could be right down the street. It could be 50 miles away. It could be unaffordable, right? And so how do we make sure that we're actually bringing care into the ways that people are living their daily lives so that it is affordable, accessible, and you're still getting high quality care? And then finally, incentives, right? If I am cooking food for my family every day, they have to eat what I cook, right? I don't give them a choice. And so the question is, how do we make sure that, if they have specific health issues, that I know about that, and then I'm also incentivized to change my behaviors to support them, right? And how do we make sure that we are creating the right nudges, incentives, and structures to enable people to be able to engage in the care that they need? And that's what we mean by engaging with communities and the different ways that we see that engagement potentially happening right now.
And, it's very powerful because in so many different areas, as you talk about it, and you talk about the community side, you can see when you bring communities into the solution and into ways to address problems, you're seeing it in many other areas. So it's very exciting to hear you driving this forward on a community basis in healthcare. Have you seen other models around this type of community-driven healthcare that just in other parts of the country?
Yeah, there are great models across the country. I'm going to pull out one that actually exists here in Maryland because this whole challenge is about, encouraging the Maryland innovation ecosystem. There's a company called LiveChair that does PCP connections and preventative screenings in barbershops. And that, I think, goes to the care journey question, right, of what do people do on a regular basis and how can we bring healthcare to them? And I think they have some great founders who are really thinking about how do we make sure that we serve often underserved populations through that type of process and startup.
Wonderful.
So yes, there are a lot of companies doing this nationally, but because this is a Maryland-focused challenge, I want to call out one that we work with in the DMV region, which is called Socially Determined. And Socially Determined actually gathers a lot of data about social determinants of health, which are the things that impact healthcare that aren't directly healthcare, right? So food security or housing, or all of these different pieces that ensure whether or not someone is able to have a healthy lifestyle. And Socially Determined actually gathers all of that data and analyzes it and enables us to figure out where some of the biggest challenges are and engage with the communities directly where those challenges exist. And allows us to have much more pointed solutions and support. And so we're really excited. We actually support Socially Determined ourselves and can't wait to see them continue to grow as one of those community-focused startups in our ecosystem.
Wonderful. We'll be very excited to see what comes out of that part of the challenge. Now we're going to turn to another area of challenge, and one that definitely is very topical now, given what we've all gone through over the last year. And for that, we're going to turn to Pritpal at SC&H Group, whose challenge goal is reimagining the hybrid workspace. We've gone through globally a experiment in remote working in a very, very rapid time frame, something that maybe would have taken very long. How did you see COVID-19 impact hybrid workspaces kind of in your world, and how has that impacted, changed, or driven the challenge goal that you're putting into the innovation community?
Absolutely, Anthony. And one of the things that I like to highlight, specifically why this challenge for our organization, is just to stay ahead of what has been kind of presented to us as you put it, an experiment that came out of nowhere, which accelerated the timeline of what was already in the works. So To give you an example, our organization is highly diverse, right? We have 11 distinct service lines that operate in very different professional services arrangements, where some of our service lines have teams that are working alongside our clients at their manufacturing facilities, because that's what's required as part of the audit arrangement. And or we have teams that are specializing in serving large organizations where a lot of the work is already done virtually, because these are international organizations and you're trying to bring in team members that are from all over the world together to kind of spearhead the concepts. And we also have 3 offices, which we felt the need to kind of continuously emphasize on keeping everybody together. And that whole notion of community, Emily, I loved it, by the way. So, that is one of the pillars at SC&H too, is how do you effectively make sure that we're working collectively to further our promise, right? And that promise to us is to our stakeholders, namely the clients, colleagues, and communities. So this challenge is more sort of, how do you continuously look beyond just what the experiment entailed, which in our experience has been, we didn't skip a beat. We've benefited from always being people first mindset as an organization. And as a result of that, we have high engagement and low turnover and many other metrics that, in this industry, we measure ourselves to, Anthony. But it's one of those things that as things are settling, most would agree that the new norm has the benefits of the virtual environment that we all have realized now. Some of us which were not ready for it had to kind of go through it because we were forced to it, and now we've appreciated it. But there are other considerations, most notably, how do you nurture training and development of newer folks when traditionally for the past 30 years you've been spearheading that effort with working alongside in someone, in a conference room mindset and hand-holding in a mentor-protege type relationship. How do you stay ahead? How do you continuously look and listen to what is that, organizationally we need to be adapting to, such that the folks that are ultimately delivering on the promises that we as an organization hold ourselves to is doing it efficiently, but more importantly, with that notion of we differentiate ourselves with mindset of that we want to be unique and we want to be listening to the tune of the people that ultimately are part of this, because we have highly caliber talent that can be anywhere. We want them to be here and working alongside and furthering our cause together. So COVID-19, this particular challenge, I think, is very close to those organizations that had an office footprint, right? One of the things that I've come to appreciate about the Baltimore, DC metro area is just knowing some of the predominant industries that we have here. Their heavy use of real estate is prominent, right? We have quite a bit of political landscape. We have quite a bit of defense contractor and government contracting. We have a lot of the traditional professional services and audit, tax, and other services. So this is something that is near and dear to us just because of that people first focus. And we want to look for ways with this community and this challenge to foster ideas of how do you strike a balance across everything that has been, that people have valued and appreciated and have resulted in a high level of engagement and camaraderie, and continuously building on that platform and training and development, while also providing the flexibility to work from anywhere in some shape or capacity going forward.
Do you see, you've spent, obviously with this being your challenge, you've spent time thinking about this. How do you think the trajectory is going to continue forward now? How do you feel the workspaces will evolve over the next few years?
Yeah, I think this once again, the timeline for what needed to be is going to get accelerated, because I do believe, if you really look at global trends and being in the innovation community, one of the things that we do at SC&H is look at the global trends, and the interconnectivity and just like Internet of Things was already giving everybody greater flexibility to do a lot of what we did traditionally in an office environment from anywhere, right? So this is, to me, nothing more than a continuum of what was already inevitable and happening. However, the timeline of what we are looking at has definitely changed, Anthony. So to me, this is simply, recognizing that ultimately we as an organization, and based on really my pulse and my understanding, is that people like to be in a social environment. There are some elements to being able to kind of work in a camaraderie setting, but that doesn't necessarily have to be alongside each other in an office environment. But to the extent that we can give that flexibility such that certain things where mentoring and coaching and or training and development, which have statistically and, been proven to be most effective when you're doing it in a sort of like a human interaction one-on-one capacity, that we have the capability to do so, and to do so in an environment that isn't set up to be like a cube-like environment and or offices where people go in. It's more sort of conducive to what really the new norm needs to be, is what we're looking for. And Anthony, more importantly, how do you engage with the community in now ways that is allowed? Because not only is it the organization's ability to serve, let's say, a project need in a remote environment, we want to be able to kind of help our community in a remote environment. These are new things that we're learning together as part of an organization, and the business and also the community service community that is now adapting all of this newness at the same time. And we want to be part of this information gathering initiative such that we can hear and consolidate all the great ideas, implement and learn from as many of those as we can, and share that with the community as we go through it along the way.
Great. Thank you so much for those introductions to everybody's challenges.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I want to applaud all of you for your ambition. And I think these are going to be extremely significant and impactful to our region and potentially nationally as well, and internationally, obviously. The Maryland Business Innovation Challenge is a tremendous initiative. I think it's bringing together all different types of stakeholders, right? You have government, you have obviously the innovation community members, such as the startups and the entrepreneurs and the accelerators and the service provider community, and then obviously the corporate challengers, such as yourselves. The regional ecosystem, no doubt, benefits. There's no doubt about it. Part of what Anthony and I wanted to do with the monthly blend is to create a forum where we can talk about building bridges among the district, Maryland and Virginia, and tearing down silos so we can all communicate together, collaborate together, and kind of take a bigger picture of solving problems. And I think all three of you, we're blessed to talk to you guys because you guys are all operating in the region, not just in a particular locale. Question for each of you, and I can start with Emily, but what strengths do you see in this region, the DMV region, in our innovation ecosystem, and what challenges do you see generally as well as specific to the Maryland Business Innovation Challenge?
Absolutely. And I have a very healthcare specific lens on this, so I'll give you that answer and would love for my colleagues to fill in other gaps. I think specifically when it comes to healthcare, right, we have all of the necessary ingredients to be a powerhouse in innovation here, right? We have research institutions who are churning out amazing new research on everything, including healthcare, right? We have a lot of the healthcare regulators within our region, which is really critical in making sure that we're actually able to keep up with the pace of innovation, but also ensure that that innovation is maintaining the safety and the health of the people that we serve. We have a lot of really amazing incubators and accelerators in this space. We have a growing realm of VC investors. I think we have fewer Series A and Series B investors in the space, but hopefully as we continue to see success in the earlier stages, we'll see more in the later stages as well. And so I think we have almost all of the right ingredients. The next step is to say, how do we connect all of them, right? And that's why we're so excited about what you guys are doing and about the Maryland Innovation Challenge, right? Which is to say, these groups aren't talking to each other, right? We, for example, have a lot of detailed information about how to design not only for the healthcare user or consumer, but also the healthcare system, which is frankly this massively complex space that is very difficult to understand. And so how do we bring that expertise to the rest of this ecosystem and engage in it with other accelerators, with entrepreneurs, et cetera, to make sure that people learn about that early and are able to build and scale innovation that can change healthcare. But I'd love to hear, my colleagues' perspectives on this as well, because I have a very specific perspective.
Oh, this is great. It's very specific, and it's great because we are very fortunate to be living in a region that is definitely cutting edge for healthcare. And Pritpal, you guys have offices in Virginia, you have offices in Maryland, you have operations, clients in both jurisdictions, and you guys operate in the DC region as well, and in the district. What are your thoughts in terms of the strengths of our innovation ecosystem, and what challenges do you see as you go about, meeting your challenge, which is a very ambitious challenge?
Absolutely. And I think, I'm going to highlight on a few things. This is my perspective on things with my exposure on the business in this community. I think, having had the benefit of the resources that have been in this geographic region for so long allows us to pull from those resources. So once again, kind of highlighting the fact that we have the political landscape based out of DC, the fact that we have heavy emphasis of organizations that support so many different industries, everything ranging from healthcare, manufacturing, defense contracting. You have quite a number of prominent brands that are based out of this DMV area and have been for a very long time. And I think that's both the I'll call it the benefit and the challenge, because the fact that we have the resources, we can draw from them and we can pull from that and kind of exponentially accelerate the conversation around innovation. However, the fact that some of these things have been rooted in so much legacy, it doesn't really allow for some of that creative freedom that you do get from organizations and environments that are kind of like the Silicon Valley, right? It is where, being on the front lines is valued, and to come up with ideas that may not sound and resonate for everybody in the beginning are open and well received. Whereas in my opinion, and I've kind of experienced this both, in this industry of working alongside my peers and then also working alongside with my clients, the notion of having a remote environment and working remotely was laughed at in my experience, right? Like 5 years ago, if I were to say, hey, we're going to do XYZ that we're doing, but the team's never going to see you other than on a virtual meeting, everybody would have been like, there's no way we can get this done. Not happening, right? And everybody that probably said that has looked back to 2020 and said, not only did we accomplish everything that we wanted to be able to accomplish in a virtual environment, we did so with a little bit unintended efficiency that nobody knew existed, right? It's almost sort of like we're learning what we didn't know. And that's really both, I think, a function of, like I said, the mindset that exists as a fact that we have been in this region for a long time. What I'm most excited about is exactly conversations like this. This is my first one to be part of, both with the Maryland Business Innovation Challenge and then also with the Monthly Blend podcast. And I applaud you for, focusing on DMV. Another thing I will highlight about our region is the notion of, hey, are you a Maryland person or are you a Virginia person or a Baltimore person? It's comical, but it is very much a common theme that many of us kind of experience in our day-to-day when you're in this area and grow up here and go around it. So the fact that this emphasis is in the clustering of everything that impacts our communities and the business and its entire footprint and the entire ecosystem kind of working together, I do think is hugely valuable, because it allows us to once again kind of draw from that broader pool of talent and mindset and the intellectual curiosity that we need to foster new ideas.
Yeah, no, great comments. I appreciate it. And John, you grew up in Northern California. You went to school in Southern California. You're bi-coastal. You probably bring a unique perspective, a West Coast vibe, if you will, to what you're doing here. I hope you are.
Hey, I'm laid back. I've got my Birkenstocks on right now. So, yeah, what? I think this area is a great area, and it is underperforming, with all the things that we have going for us. I think the opportunity through the efforts that we're all making and highlighted here to really advance the DMV. And a couple things I'd touch on is we've got a lot of smart people here. So that's a natural resource, right? I think per capita, we're the smartest region in the country with PhDs and grad school graduates and all of that. And that goes into think tanks and research institutions and all of that. So that's an important part. We have a lot of wealth. I mean, some of the wealthiest parts of the country, counties, cities are here. So you would think that that could also benefit us in a lot of ways. I think the District of Columbia and this region thinks we're the center of the universe. And we're pretty important, obviously, as the head of the largest economy from a government and policy perspective. And I think that's an important thing too. In my world of talking about quantum and with AI, for example, we really need policy to advance to make sure that these things are used in the proper way, ethical AI. Imagine the power that one has with quantum computing that could be used for ill will. And there is an international race on, and our country is starting to look at that. Actually, China just put out that they have a 5-year plan to dominate these technologies. And we have some legislation in the House and Senate that's looking for America to take it more seriously. I will note in 2018, they passed the National Quantum Initiative, which is really starting to formulate an industrial policy for the US to promote this type of technology, to build infrastructure, and to build workforce development capabilities, because you can't really have great technology if nobody knows how to use it and take advantage of it. So I want to give a few shout outs to the leadership in this region, because as noted, we are different areas. We're DC, we're Virginia, we're Maryland, but there's an organization called Connected DMV that brings together the business, academia, and government communities through some trade associations and organizations. And they're really looking for better regional cooperation. With specifically, think about when we tried to bring the Olympics here, some regional coordinating event, because we are together a very strong and wealthy region. Also, as it relates to quantum, there's the Mid-Atlantic Quantum Alliance out of Maryland. And that's actually how I got involved with this business innovation challenge. And they were originally the Maryland Quantum Alliance. And then lastly, the Potomac Quantum Innovation Center, which is a project out of Connected DMV that I've been kind of a leader and co-creator of. And that's really building an ecosystem. So all these organizations are really about ecosystem coordination, making sure that we work together, not at odds with each other, to make our region, as successful as it can be. One last thing you mentioned or asked about challenges. I think VC funding is a tough one. 80+% goes to California, some to Boston, some to Austin, very little here. And we do have Revolution and a few other organizations that are doing good work, but we need to get more of that money here into the region. And I think that's one of the really the big challenges, and have the world see us as a place where technology can happen. We're not just a government town. And I think quantum is a new and evolving and exploding market, and an opportunity because of, the things I've already shared, to really bring that here in a meaningful way. And a lot of people are working towards that. So.
Yeah, no, I think that you brought up, the magic wand answer to the question, if you had a magic wand, what would you do? I think your answer would be more VC money, which would hopefully get us to be less, quote, underperforming, to use your words. But along those lines, I'd like to ask Emily and Pritpal, if you guys had a magic wand and you could do one thing to change the way our ecosystem works and improve, people working together to achieve big ideas, what would that be?
I think from my perspective, Ian, just to be able to kind of keep up with the pace of ideas and be able to be comfortable to, move without always, I'll rephrase it. One of the things that I would say we could really benefit from is not being sticky, meaning at times we catch ourselves asking ourselves all the questions why something may or may not work. They in business terminology can be in the form of what's the return on investment. I do think some of that kind of gets in the way of innovating and being naturally curious about moving and learning from the experience of it. To the extent you culture in a community where everybody comes together and you emphasize the value of being able to try new things and learn along the way and adopt what works and don't do anything that's stupid and doesn't work and leave that behind. I believe that could be hugely valuable in this area for us to be able to kind of move through what we are already inevitably doing, but to do it a little bit faster pace and hopefully more efficiency and more fun along the way.
Great. No, that's a great answer. I think the pace of communication and ideas is just lightning, more intense than ever before in humankind. Emily, if you had a magic wand, what would you do?
I feel like I'm about to repeat what everyone else has said, but I think it's important, right? I mean, so VC money is always a given, right? It's always really helpful.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that you see that's powerful in a place like San Francisco and growing in Denver and in Austin, right, is this concentration of startups, right? So there are a lot of startups and therefore there are lots of VCs, which then brings in a lot of accelerators, right? There's just like this network effect that happens. And a lot of that comes from the curiosity that Pritpal mentioned, right? Which is really critical. I would say though that especially in healthcare, after investing in healthcare companies and being part of healthcare companies, what I've realized is like that move fast and break things mentality that you see in a place like San Francisco is really important, but it doesn't always work in healthcare because there are so many established systems and regulations and complexity within that space. And so at risk of sounding cliche, I would also say this is kind of that magic wand that I would wave, right? Which is to say like, we need corporations giving feedback to early stage startups, not to limit their curiosity or their adventureness or their, creativity, but to help direct that into an area where it can be sustainable and scalable and kind of integrated or parallel to what already exists, just to make sure that you don't get, 2 years in, have this really amazing product, and then you can't do anything with it because it doesn't work within some of the other systems that happen. And so I do think that this is a really powerful way of bringing those things together. Sorry for being cliche.
No, that's a very good point. No, excellent. Thank you so much.
Can I give one more shout out? Because there's a guy on this video cast that's really doing the things that we're talking about. That's you, Tian, with Connectpreneur. So that's bringing the fun,
yes,
the ecosystem, the people together, and standing on the shoulders of a gentleman that you may or may not know, Mario Marino. Yes. I've been in the tech industry since 1988, and he was an early pioneer in Netpreneur. It was the organization that was really trying to build a lot of excitement around the tech community here, and I think Tian's doing that now.
Mario's a great guy. I still talk to him once in a while. I do remember going to his Netpreneur events, and some people have drawn that comparison before between Connectpreneur and Netpreneur, and well, it wasn't
you're the better, younger looking guy, okay?
Well, okay, you're too.
You don't know what to do with that, huh?
I'm embarrassed. It's time to turn it back over to Anthony.
Thanks. Emily, in terms of what you just said, which I think is really important, this challenge was one great example of established leading companies working with startup companies in the earliest stage of the market, and you just highlighted the fact of being able to make sure those companies find product market fit sooner by making sure it's not just the focus on the technology, but understanding how it's going to work. The monthly blend has spent a lot of time not just looking at collaboration within geography within the DMV, but looking at how different groups, different segments of the ecosystem can work and interact together in better ways with the challenge that you just talked about. I'd love to hear from everybody. Any other thoughts you have sitting on the kind of established leading corporate side, although you've mentioned in different parts of your experiences, you've also been on the earlier stage startup. Other ways you see that relationship between the more established companies and the earlier part of the ecosystem working and collaborating together for the benefit of both. And I'd just love to hear from all of you, just any other thoughts you may have on that concept. And maybe we'll start Pritpal with you, and then kind of go to John, and then back to Emily.
Sure, and I think I believe in just having a disciplined approach to what you're trying to do, even if it is just being curious and holding yourself to better yourself and where you are, right? So innovation, a couple of different things I want to highlight. It's not just technology; it's the mindset of being able to do something that you know better, right? So I would challenge, those that are listening to this podcast, those that have been part of the journey, looking at what can be, to hold each and every one to a discipline. For me, it's very simple. It's sort of, at least pausing every now and then, reflecting on what has been, what's working, and learn from that. But then asking myself simple questions of, does that make sense? Does it still make sense tomorrow? Does it make sense 5 days from now? Does it make sense 5 years from now, right? If not, what are some of the things that you've got to be able to put in motion today, such that when you get to that, you've been able to realize much of the imagination that you've been able to hold yourself today. To be able to do that curiosity questionnaire among a community, and I think this is very important for the business community and small, large organizations together, is to be able to kind of foster that, I'll call it, idea-based conversations is important. So my hope is, through platforms just like this, we're going to have more co-mingling and cross-mingling of people that represent different points of view, different expertise, sharing ideas of how we answer these simple questions, and then to be able to lean on the larger organizations with resources and connections to be able to put those ideas where merit is warranted in motion, to be able to kind of see the fruits of some of those. So I think that's key, Anthony, and I'm hopeful just that, we just have more and more of these opportunities in this area, in all areas, but in the business community, having those simple conversations of always looking ahead with the notion of just making sure that, to the extent we can come up with ideas that simply get us there, there's no reason why we can't. So.
Great. No, those are very important. And that kind of experience and guidance, I think, will be very helpful for startup and emerging companies listening today. John?
Yeah, you know what? I would echo what Pritpal said about connecting people. And, it's the ideas that come from the interaction and, the networking events, the organizations that we might belong to. I'll go back to, I've been around a while. There's, the business groups, there's the education groups, and government groups. If you can bring them together, which I think Connected DMV is making a strong effort at, and that is the Board of Trade, which is the business organization representing mostly the region, the Consortium of Universities, and the Metropolitan Council of Government. So bringing a lot of people together, big and small organizations, a lot of opportunity for people to get involved in working groups, kind of as volunteers, expand their network, and creative ideas have come out of that. Obviously big companies have, investment arms and organizations within them that look at opportunities in the market. Google Ventures, IBM does this. We acquire technology and companies all the time. We're probably a little bit more bureaucratic and harder to navigate, but we do that. And, I think it really comes down to the people and, leaders that are out there in the community seeing good things and thinking it's a great idea and really, pushing that forward. And, that's kind of my role. I'm a big booster of this area, lived my adult life here, and, want to see our state, our region win. And I think we do that by connecting with people and promoting good ideas.
So Emily, we're coming to the end of the show. I'm going to turn to you for we started the show talking about the value of this challenge and connecting corporations and leaders in their fields with emerging companies. Do you have any last thoughts you want to share with us on that?
Absolutely. I'm going to get slightly more tactical, and then we'll hopefully zoom it out to the theoretical piece as well, right? Which is, my team, Healthworx, is focused on connecting startups and early stage innovation into CareFirst as the larger company, right? And so we do that on multiple different levels, right? We make the investments, we build the partnerships and the pilots. And we recently launched another program called 1501 Health, which is an incubator for early stage startups. So I think that there are lots of really tactical ways that we are trying to solve this problem right now. That said, building on the other pieces that I've heard with my colleagues, right? I think I love that Pritpal keeps talking about imagination and curiosity, right? And connecting people, and John echoing that, right? Those are the types of things that are really important. And I think at Healthworx right now, we both know some of the things that work, and we are doing those, right? We are acting on those. But I'd say we're also still in our own design process, right? To say, ask the questions of the market, say, what are the gaps that need to be filled? Where can our expertise support the overall growth of this ecosystem? And what are the other types of convening events or investments or expertise support, or a wide variety of those things? Where else can we contribute? And I have some guesses, but the reality, right, is that has to come from the market. It can't come from any assumptions that I'm making. And I say that is the process that we are in right now, is having these types of theoretical conversations to say, what is missing? where does that problem match our ability, and how can we bring that together in a way that really adds value to this region overall and to the startups that I, as a human in Healthworx, are really passionate about supporting.
Thank you very much. I think, again, similar to all three of your statements that you've made around this, there is so much value that the early part of the ecosystem can gain in different ways from working with each of your different organizations, and particularly through this challenge that you're all part of now. So Tien, I will hand it back to you to close out our show today.
Yeah, so I would like to thank John, Emily, and Pritpal for sharing your insights and telling more about your challenges, and sharing what you think we can do to help make this DMB ecosystem better. And I look forward to learning more about your progress, and maybe we can have you guys back after some amount of time and see we can debrief on successes and key learnings and whatnot. We really appreciate you guys spending your time with us. And so the only thing I would say is if it's okay, we can put some contact information so that if people that are in our audience who want to contribute or help you guys or volunteer, they have a way to get a hold of you to discuss. Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Please do.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much. We're very, very grateful for your insights and spending your time with us. So on behalf of Anthony and myself, thank you guys very much.
Great. Well, thank you for your leadership, guys. This was enjoyable and nice meeting the other folks too.
It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
And I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Signing off.